While the world is evolving, women are still lagging behind when it comes to leadership roles in many sectors. Today, we discuss the challenges, obstacles in our way, but also the opportunities that we should take advantage of and the victories that we should celebrate as we continue to make things easier for the next generation of women. We are in conversation with women from various fields who are participating in the world, creating a new reality for women, challenging a male-dominated world by their being. These conversations are real, about inequality and about how we can close the gap for future generations. From Yvonne Chaka Chaka to a United Nations military officer to a professional coach and South Africa's public protector. The theme for this year's Women's Day is I Am Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights. This dialogue where you learn how to participate in the world. This Women's Day, we're talking about how to act and participate in the world and in South Africa in a way that changes our current reality for future generations of both men and, more importantly, women. Let me start here. Women have been fighting against inequality for a very long time. In 1956, on the 9th of August, women marched against unjust pass laws. So to be frank, when I first saw this theme, I thought to myself, this is not new. Realizing women's rights isn't a new thing. But then I thought about it, and I guess it's not false to say that the struggle does in fact continue, that the struggle continues. It's still a struggle, a different struggle, but a struggle nonetheless. So I'm going to begin with Michelle Ashen. I'll start with you to kickstart our conversation today. And as I've mentioned, the fight for equality doesn't start with us. However, the baton to keep going and running is indeed now with us. What do you perceive to be your role now in making sure that the path is easier for the next generation of women, as it was made slightly easier for us by women before us? Michelle?
But thanks, Flo, for that welcome and for that introduction. I think certainly for me, where we find ourselves in today really requires two things. One, that we know our place in the world, and two, that we participate in the world. I think it's really important that we stop talking and start doing in order to change and create a new reality for the women that are going to follow in front of us. I mean, not too long ago, I had a really interesting conversation with Deirdre, and she's from the military, and she does a lot of work with the United Nations. And to see what she is doing as a result of her experience in gender equality certainly is something for me that I take a page out of my own book. So in my own situation, taking my experience of burnout and working in the corporate industry and realizing just how expensive coach training, self-mastery, mindfulness, personal effectiveness is really a luxury. It's expensive. And that was one of the reasons why I started African United, was to make the journey of self-mastery accessible to women, to Africans, so that we can reach a stage where we're contributing in the world, where we know our place in the world, where we're changing where we are and creating a new reality for women. Deirdre, I'd love you to share some of your experiences in terms of what you've been doing to act and create a new reality for women.
Hi everyone, my name is Deirdre Carvery. I'm from the accent, I'm from Ireland, and I served for 15 years in the Irish Defence Forces as an infantry officer, but also as a human security and gender advisor. And during that time, as recently as last year, I had the privilege to serve with incredible South African soldiers, women, over in the DRC as part of the United Nations mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I think one of the things, as Michelle alluded to, as women in the military, we are going into a hyper-masculine military culture. And, for me, that was certainly an adjustment. And I learned a lot about myself and my own resiliency and, I challenged my ideas around, femininity and masculinities were very much challenged. But I think for me, one of the the moments that shaped me in my life, and now that I reflect back on it, is my service with the United Nations. And I think through service with the United Nations, I've seen some of the very worst and some of the very best in humanity. And we see in many missions that the United Nations and our own countries serve in, there will be very clear inequalities. And we know that conflict and war exacerbates existing inequality. And I think as a result of those experiences, I've come back and like Michelle has alluded to as well, come back, and I think it's up to all of us to do a little bit of self-reflection and not ask, what are others doing, but what can we do ourselves? And I think this is really important as well around the theme of this year's Women's Day. It's all about collective individualism, individual action, and concerted actions. And I think, if each of us play a small role in that and take proactive actions, we can actually change. And we see huge progress has been made over the last few years, but it's still not enough. And I think, again, one of the things through my military service that I realized is that this isn't, an issue. Inequality isn't something that happens somewhere else. This is something, that we see very clearly in Ireland. I'm sure we see it in South Africa. We see it across, Europe, the US. And for me, my focus now through my work with the World Health Innovation Summit platform and looking at progressing the UN Sustainable Development Goals is the correlation or the connection between inequality and insecurity.
Yeah. Let me come to you, Advocate Carvery. I'd like to move to another sector that's really known to be a sort of male-dominated sector, and that is certainly the legal fraternity. There's one thing I do know about the legal fraternity is that it is predominantly male and it is predominantly white. Now, you're neither of the two. In your time, and I mean, going back to, as a student studying law, to where you are really in one of the highest offices for justice in the country, and no doubt you're dealing a lot with, some women's issues in your office. And as a woman yourself, I'd like you to look back, from where you came from and to where you are now. What do you look back and say, this stands out as a notable difference for women in this field in terms of how perhaps things have changed and where you see things going for women that enter the legal fraternity?
Thank you so much, Flo, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experience, and also, as you're saying, that we are doing this for the generations to come. Also, not to go through what we've been through, and as well pave the way for them to find it easy. But what I would say is that studying law as well is one area where it's also in my class when I was studying. It's male dominated, I must say that, because you'd find that a lot of women are not keen in studying law. And unfortunately, law is a central part to anything which we are doing. You talk of contractual, you talk of taking the child to school, you talk of employment related issues. So that's where you would find that a legal fraternity is very critical in our societies. But then I must also indicate that starting to work as a prosecutor, working especially with most of the maintenance matters, and that's where women are impacted. But then I must indicate that I think those are the areas which we need to focus on, and in my daily operations as well, the kind of complaints we are receiving, again, is still unfortunate. We receive a lot of complaints from males more than women. So again, it's a question of us continuously also empowering women to stand for themselves and not to keep quiet, because service delivery impacts on them the most. I mean, when it comes to provision of water, sanitation, nutrition, it impacts a lot on women because they are taking care of children. And when it comes to issues of corruption, unfortunately, you find that the perpetrators are mostly men compared to women. That's where I would give women that pat on the back to say, we are trying by all means, because I think fortunately for women, it's when you deal with any matter you are dealing with, you are checking what will that do to the systemic challenges of society, irrespective of color, creed, or gender. Thank you, Flo.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Advocate. I'm going to come to you, Dr. Daniela, as a specialist psychiatrist, and I just want to carry on from where the Advocate was in terms of empowering women. In the field you're in, you're obviously having conversations, and sometimes it's with women who are actually not feeling very empowered. What is your role in terms of trying to get women to perhaps move forward? You can leave, situations that aren't necessarily, healthy for you. I mean, what are the sort of tools, I suppose, that you are helping women to understand the current position that we're in and that we can move forward to? Dr. Daniela.
And that's a challenge that I face in my practice. Following on what the Advocate said, I deal with a lot of abused women, a lot of gender-based violence, and what we see is sometimes these disempowered women that feel that can't leave. And I mean, there's various reasons for that: emotional, economic, reasons. So maybe a lot of illegal immigrants, things like undocumented individuals, and that they have no recourse against these men, and they feel completely disempowered. And we're sort of seeing almost like beaten woman syndrome, where even with the women that can leave, are just not seeing the way that they're going to do so. And sometimes empowering them can be extremely challenging, also given that, unfortunately, our justice system doesn't cater. I mean, I think we're just not there in terms of, advising someone to get a protection order. Often the drama that we see, trying to do that, the amount of women that are killed trying to leave their partners. So I think, that's a hugely challenging sort of aspect of it. But in my practice, I have a huge interest in empowering women. I mean, I myself, I was an athlete, I've retired, but I was formerly an athlete in a very male-dominated sport. And one of the ways that I'm using to empower these women is through boxing. So I run groups for women who need to be empowered in various ways, whether it's gender-based violence or whether it's bullying in the workplace, things like that. And I'm finding, strangely enough, boxing is actually not so much as a self-defense, but more on an emotional level, that these women are using it to actually feel empowered and sort of not only just to give them a break to lift their spirits, but it's something I would like to research exactly what about boxing makes these women feel so empowered. But, to look beyond the conventional psychological methods we use, the pharmacology, so the medication, and kind of novel methods for empowering women.
And I mean, it's great because we actually do have an athlete on the panel. Andre, I'll come to you shortly, but I want to come to the issue of really activism. When we're talking about empowering women, it's very important that we bring in the topic of, empowerment. And this is where I'd like to actually bring in Josina. Josina, if you can just talk to us. Josina, you are an activist. You're the daughter of, two powerful historic figures. I mean, we read about Samora Machel in our history books. He's often quoted. I mean, your father was at the forefront, really, of driving social change. And I suppose that must have had a very profound impact on your own life. But you've had your own own a very difficult journey, your own personal experiences, which led you onto this path of activism. So you weren't necessarily just sort of piggybacking on, your name, your parents' names or your stepfather's name, Nelson Mandela. You actually had your own real experiences that pushed you and propelled you into going into activism. Perhaps you can tell us about, what kind of gave you that, I suppose, wake-up call that led you to realize that you yourself have to lead this fight for equality and really pushing for women's rights. And I know that women's rights in particular are very close to your heart.
Hi, thank you, fabulous women. Hi, Flo. I like to say that destiny had an interesting twist for my life. I was trained in sociology and had always worked around empowerment of women. But then in 2015, I was brutally attacked by my then partner, and I lost my right eye. What that caused was I was introduced to a whole journey of violence against women, but most important, how the system actually does not facilitate, and in many cases, it exacerbates the experiences of victims of violence. So I was introduced, let's say, into the space through the discrimination and the total neglect at a medical institution, in a public institution in Mozambique. Later on, it was through discovering that all my documentation in the hospital and at the police had completely disappeared. When I started the journey into the legal system, I had the same experience. By the time we a year into the journey, we had discovered that my documents had disappeared 6 times in the judicial system. Yeah. So my lawyer and I had actually adopted a strategy where whenever we submitted documentation, we would have to make 3 copies to ensure that eventually we could prove that we had submitted the documents. Now, of course, the expectation would have been that because of my background, these kind of experiences would not happen to me. But I guess life, destiny, and sometimes I like to say God, it's my way of accepting it. God wanted me actually to go through the experience that millions of women actually still go through every single day whenever they want to report the experiences, whenever they want to have the experiences validated, and whenever they want to take it to court. So it's a whole system where the abuser, is able to be supported by patriarchy and all the privileges and the impunity that men are afforded by virtue of being men. So it takes women basically from a position whereas they are victims, they somehow are actually portrayed as the perpetrators, to the extent that it's always asked of us, what did you do? What were you wearing? Why are you talking about it? All of a sudden we are victims and we are actually forbidden from using our own voice in trying to get justice, and sometimes even just in telling our stories, because there is a lot of power in that, in just telling our stories. Now, this is my story is not really, it's not different at all from many. Just recently, in spite of having won a trial in 2017, a month ago, a superior appeals court has decided that because my incident happened only when it was me and him, there are no witnesses to the crime. Therefore, they've decided that he is innocent. Mm-hmm. So, in spite of all the evidence, including a confession, including all the evidence, the medical evidence that the injury was caused by a blunt instrument, let's say a fist, and not
a piercing instrument, as it had been argued by the defense. In spite of all that information, the legal system in Mozambique has decided that this monster, I like to call him, is actually innocent of the crime.
Yeah, I'd like to bring in Mami Von Chaka. I mean, the music industry has historically been tough on women. I'm just listening to what Justina is talking about. I mean, you've seen women in your industry, in the music industry, getting involved in toxic and abusive relationships. How have you managed to cope in this industry without falling into those similar traps? And I suppose this is an ideal time, to give that message to young women who want to have that sort of fame and success that you've enjoyed and sustained all these years, without really, being in harm's way or self-destructing, as some of the women in the music industry, we see them happen. And Tanda Yonkosi, I'd also like you to come in, after Mami Von, in terms of, you're a former pageant queen, an industry that's known to be quite abusive as well to women. That sort of is seen as an industry that kind of glorifies the sexualization, I suppose, of women. And I'd really like you to also add on to what Mami Von would be speaking on.
Thank you very much, Flo, and thank you to all the phenomenal women who are here. And what I like is that there's a generation gap, in the panel, which is very, very good. I think, it's for a very long time, women have been disenfranchised, segregated, all women, Black women, white women, all women of color. But I think our parents really fought very hard, even though the system was not good for them, to fight. I mean, we've seen strong women. You go to Liberia, there was Chief Swakoko. You go to the Cape, there was Chief Nongawusa. You go to the Northern Province, there was King Mujaji. So women have always been very strong. I think it's now in the century where men decided we want to break them. And I think we really sort of fell for it, because women have always been very strong, even though they were disenfranchised. And I really, really believe in strong women. My mother worked as a domestic worker. And today I still say I walk very tall, because when my dad died at 11, Mom was a single woman, but she was a very strong woman. She was ahead of her times. My mother said to us, to Refilwe and Doreen and myself, I don't want you to turn out to be domestic workers like me. I want you to have education. I want you to be empowered. I want you to do things for yourselves and never depend on men. Because remember, that man has their parents, has the extended family and everything. So when you are young, you think you want to be a young girl and then get married. That's not what my mother taught me. My mother taught me to be a strong and very assertive woman. She said, if marriage comes, it will come. So coming to the industry that I'm in, from day one, I knew that this is me, this is what I want to do, and I'm not going to let anyone trample on me. I'm not going to have anyone telling me how to do things or even be submissive to them or be taken for granted. So you need to know who you are. So coming from a very strong family of females really, really helped me, because it doesn't matter how great a voice you can have, but if you don't have that willpower, if you don't have that strong belief in yourself, people will always trample on you. People will always think they're doing you a favor. So I want to come back as a mother of 4 boys to say, boys and girls come from families. These are human beings. What are we doing as the society? Everything begins at home. Then it goes to this community. Then it's the society. Boys are being told, eat, leave the dishes there. The girls will wash them. No. When you are a mother at home, you need to tell your boy child that you wash those dishes. You make the bed. My husband knows. If I wake up before him, he wakes up after me, he makes a bed. We slept here in this bed together. So he must make the bed. And it's those things that we as a society have to do, and not tell girls that, oh, you're very feminine, allow your brothers to do this for you. No, yeah. I wake up, and if there are no lights or bulbs, I do the bulbs. That's a man's job. This is what we are told. No, but if my husband wants to cook, the society says, no, it shouldn't be done. You can't have your husband cook, umfaki korobela, and things like that, So it's the things that we do in our homes, it's the things that we do as a society that says to women, you are feminine, you need to hold on to this man. No, femininity means you are just a woman. Being a strong person doesn't make you, to be not loved. So I want to say to anybody or to any young girl out there, whether you want to be in the music industry, whether you want to be in the beauty industry, be what you want to be and never let anyone do anything to you. We know that a woman was taken out of a man's rib to be loved, to be cherished, to be given everything that she needs, but not to be trampled upon. So it doesn't matter what industry you are in, we need to know that we are all human beings, just like flowers in the garden. So no man is allowed to trample upon a woman. And this must be said today and right here.
Yeah, Talenkosi, I mean, you're in this industry that's, some have said, as feminism becomes, the sort of key issue. It's some people have said, and you'll hear many women saying that perhaps beauty pageants have sort of lost their relevance. But I often beg to differ. I say, whatever industry you're in, you can perhaps use it, as a stepping stone to empower yourself and others going forward. And really, what have you done in terms of using what's this title that some women love, that's Miss South Africa title, to kind of propel you forward to do many bigger things than just being seen as this, beauty pageant?
Thank you so much, Flo, for the question. And thank you to all the ladies that are here today. You guys are all dropping gems. What we mean by gems is that you are dropping valuable information that as a young person, I'm really taking to heart and just learning from all your experiences. Being Miss South Africa, for me, it was an opportunity to have a platform that will give me a voice. I do understand when you look back at what the Miss South Africa platform represented before, it never really had anything to do with what the capabilities of that woman are, but it's just that she looked good and she took great pictures. But overall, when you look at the transformation of the pageant and where it is now, it has demonstrated that it's more than just being a beautiful girl, but it comes with being a beauty with brains. And what do you do with that combination provided together? So what then happens is, when you look at the change within this industry, it then provides an opportunity for not only myself as a pageant person, but only any other woman to provide platforms where women don't necessarily have to be in a bikini to be provided an opportunity, where they can just be, where we create platforms where women can express themselves in different ways without having to show up in a way that maybe they feel uncomfortable or however they do not want to feel. So that's an opportunity for us, even on this platform, to do things like that. So it's an opportunity. And what I have learned with Miss South Africa, and even after my journey when I work with women in different fields, in different communities, because I personally have a passion for women in our rural and township areas, because I feel I more identify with the challenges that they face on a daily basis. And the best way we can empower these women, it's to always upskill them as much as we can, because when you upskill a woman, it's easier for you to make a decision. About women that it's so hard for them to leave a certain relationship, because obviously there's that economic part of it where you can't leave because who's going to pay my rent, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. The minute we upskill women, she's able to make decisions of the fact that I just want to make the decision because I can, and she's not forced because how am I going to live after this? So it's very important for us when we talk about empowering women, we should not neglect the fact that we need to empower them by upskilling them. So that is physical skills, and that's also looking at soft skills. What we do with a partner of mine when it comes to our model boot camps, we have created a platform where it's not only just about being a model, but we're upskilling these girls on how to present yourself, how to go into an interview, how to take care of your social media platforms. These are skills, soft skills that will help them to be able to better navigate the areas in which they want to go into. And what is very important is always to say, we are not saying you must go be a model, but what we are telling you is that what we have used to achieve being a Miss South Africa, being a Miss whatever, these are the certain skills we have learned along the way, and you can also take these skills and apply them to whichever area of your life that you can use them from. Because to honestly tell you, what we learned through pageants, it's something you can take and you could put it in every area of your life.
All right, thank you very much. And Renee, you're a sportswoman, and we often hear about disparities in terms of how women and men are treated in sports. Men are paid more. The pay gap between women in sports and men in sports, and I wonder what has been your biggest sort of I don't want to say gripe, but I think that's the word I'll use because I'm talking about my own gripes. But what is your personal sort of, I suppose, your struggle that you feel you need to sort of fight for women that are in sport?
Hi everyone, it's an honor. I'm someone that loves to take in everything, so it's lovely to see all of you and to see your personalities and stories. I value that so much, and having this platform is really incredible to share a bit about my life. I'm a Paralympic athlete, and I actually have two things that are in inequality that is a challenge. I'm disabled and I'm a woman, and that's two things that is definitely growing, and I'm happy that I can be a voice as well with you all to make a change and to make the world see it in a different way. I also am grateful that things have changed a lot, and they are still changing in Paralympic sport, and as well a lot of things with women that are not equal and are seen. And there's a lot of, sorry, I'm Afrikaans, sorry. So I'm thinking in Afrikaans and putting that in English is difficult. So there might be some words here that you're like, where is that in the dictionary? But that's me, and that's the beauty of it as well. So yeah, I have those two challenges as in the sporting area, and yes, it's been raised quite a lot, and I've always been someone that I speak up, but I'm always so scared of what to say and how to say it. So hearing you guys, how you speak, empowering women to show them that there is a place to be a voice, and there is a content and a way to put that words into action. So yes, we do struggle. We struggle a lot. My struggle as personally as an athlete is supposed to obviously be fit and strong. Like, what is strong? Is it big-built, physically strong, or are you strong in personality and who you are? And as being a woman and in sport, I always was challenged like a sport person needs to be, you have to have muscles. And I'm very lean, so my muscles is quite, it's still developing. And I was always scared that I don't want to look like a man. I don't want to have too much muscles. Whereas when I started doing sports and athletics, I started to realize, you know what? That's part of like, I must love that fact of sport for who I am. So bring sport into being a woman. We must acknowledge and not compare ourselves with one another. We must appreciate our bodies and our challenges and our journeys with exercise and with everything we take on. And that's something in Women's Month I want to encourage everybody listening and to everybody to not compare our stories, but to take from each other and to work from another and to love one another for what that is.
Yeah, Andre talks about speaking up, and Gillian, I'm going to come to you. You do your speaking up in a different way, don't you? You use writing as your way of speaking up, and I mean, you're a travel writer, you're a science writer, and both really is, we've often seen men being at the forefront of travel writing and science writing. How have you managed to change, I suppose, perceptions and really sort of being known as a woman who writes on these topics that perhaps people would generally want to say, well, we take a male seriously in this field? How have you used your writing to, and I suppose it is activism in a way, in terms of showcasing what women are capable of doing when it comes to writing about science, about travel and so forth?
Well, I think that in a way I've been very privileged in that there are quite a lot of women involved in this field. And so it hasn't been a particularly difficult thing for me in terms of being a woman. I think that I'd also like to encourage people that there's no limit with age, because I only started 10 years ago. I've been writing for 10 years. So I went back to university in my 50s. And it certainly has been amazing to be part of writing and telling people about the wonderful places that there are in the world, and also not being held back by being a woman. I've been able to paraglide, parasail. I've been able to do scuba diving. I've really had a wonderful time of adventure. So even though I'm in my dotage and I'm sort of in the time of being a crone, I've also had the wonderful opportunity as a woman to travel, to meet people all over the world and to write about it. And I often travel alone, so I have found that there's nothing that a woman can't do. There's no place that you can't go. And that has been wonderful. So it's been great. I've traveled in many countries in Asia on my own, Europe, and I've always been safe. I thank God for that. But it's true that I wouldn't let being a woman stop you from doing anything that you've got in your heart, anything that you have a gift for.
Yeah. Michelle, let me hand back to you then to lead the conversation. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you have kind of had to, push through certain ceilings.
Thank you, Flo, and to all the women. So lovely hearing from everybody. I think there's definitely some key points that are coming out from everybody. I loved what Yvonne Chaka was saying about knowing yourself and just standing up for yourself and not necessarily going against society norms, but actually, I can do this. I can change a light bulb. I don't have to cook. I don't have to clean. Man, you can do it too. And the wisdom that comes from the generations before us. I think the key thing for us on this call that is also being really highlighted is the importance of women participating in the world together. So many campaigns have been running around, women for women, we have to stand together. We really do need to do that. We need to put aside our differences because this is a complex problem. I think the one thing that's also coming out in conversation with the comments that everybody has made is that as women, we face a lot of complex challenges. And it's going to take all of us coming together to participate with one another to solution all of these different problems, from experiencing gender-based violence to where is a safe place for me to go? How do I get empowered? What are the tools? How do I take care of myself? And as much as I'm choosing courage, I can also choose, or as much as I'm choosing fear and anxiety, I can also choose courage. How do I do that? How do I consistently do that and overcome challenges? I mean, Gillian was talking about going back to university at 50. I'm turning 40. I'm like, yeah, I would do that. Why not? And I think what women are forgetting is that circles like these, conversations like these, it dates back 5,000 years, even back to the Hermetic texts and the conversations with Plato and Socrates, that these sorts of dialogues is how we learn, how we get inspired, how we get upskilled, how we can participate in one another's consciousness, and how we can create a new reality. Because after hearing what Yvonne said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to go and tell my son, high five, man, because you make your bed, but tomorrow you're making breakfast for me on my birthday, because I've learned something new, something different. And I'm going to tell my father, I'm going back to university. It doesn't matter if I'm 40, I'm going to do it. And I can have a career change if I want to, because I can. And I think we need to have more conversations with the intention to participate with one another and to create a new reality.
I just wanted to add to what Oma has spoken about when it comes to GBV. It's something that's very close to my heart, and I believe it's very close to everyone's heart because it impacts the work that we do in our society as well, because we are busy with all these programs that are uplifting women, upskilling women, but at the end of the day, the very same women are the ones that can no longer contribute to the economy because they've been killed, because they are missing, because of so many other factors. And so it impacts the work that we do as well. So you touched on something very important when it goes back to yes, the law has really failed us in terms of how these cases are being dealt with, but also the conversations that are happening on the ground around GBV as well. There's something you touched on, and something that I've also seen a lot of other women experience, where you go to the police station and you say, I've been raped, but before they even ask any other questions, the first question is, what did you do? Or maybe your husband hit you, or things like that. The question is never, it's asked to what did you do? So it's as if, as a woman, there's something that you can do that warrants someone to hit you, that warrants someone to kill you. And even us as women as well, when you tell another woman, she then also asks you the same question, wenzeni? So there's a problem in the conversations that are being had. There's a problem in how we raise our boy children as well. I'm a mom to a little boy, and I have to also think about, how am I raising this boy so that he does not become the men that we currently see in society? And so we have to be intentional as the people here as well, and anyone else that's going to be watching this, is what conversations are we having on the ground with our kids? How are our children being raised as well? Because the GBV that's happening is a result of. So let's go back then to what is the root of everything that is happening in our society, and how is it that we can then, with our different platforms, change the root conversations that contribute to the GBV that we experience today.
Yeah. Dr. Daniela, I see you wanted to also come in there and weigh in on the topic.
A lot of what especially when Justina spoke, it echoed so much of the journeys that I've gone on with women who've been victims, that they're simply re-traumatized. So you'll go with them. I often will go with patients to the police station to open a case, for example, get a protection order. These women are re-traumatized. They're re-traumatized, and I think another important point that was made is that it's not just by men. It's by women. People sort of questioning the veracity of what they're saying, that they're almost, that they're on trial. They're on trial just for saying, speaking up. And sometimes it causes so much trauma for the victim who's already traumatized that at the end of the day, so many women actually don't go through with it, and they don't actually press charges. And that's why we see a lot of women just sort of, nothing is done at the end of the day. So I think that's an important point, is pretty much how victims, and I see it every single day, that they are re-traumatized, and a lot of the time they don't have the support system, they don't have the financial resources to go through with it, and ultimately nothing comes of it, which breaks my heart. And I can't say that we as healthcare professionals are innocent either.
At the end of the day, whether we like it or not, patriarchy is also what leads to gender-based violence. Just your take on the issue of gender-based violence, Ma'am Yvonne.
I think it's actually very, very sad that, there's a lot of patriarchy. But I think, the struggle is not ours alone. For us to close the gaps and to achieve our objectives, we need help from our men, from our women, the community and the society at large. But I think the most important thing is our policymakers, the government, and the justice system that's continuously failing our women. Because, I always ask myself, what is a woman? Women are nurturing and strong. And that is what we have to know. I'm a musician. I always compose these songs. So I want to say to all the women out here and those who are watching that we as women, we are an inspiration bringing education on gender equalization. So you need to love me and respect me because I, as a woman, ngili power.
All right. Deirdre, I know you wanted to come in as well.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, just hearing everyone's stories is incredible. So I really feel privileged just to be part of this conversation today. And I think what's really hitting me is whether, listening to the stories that are being shared here are serving with the United Nations in the DRC or Lebanon, or involved in policy development here in Ireland, or with the UN or NATO, or indeed working with companies that are trying to promote women's empowerment and women's leadership. I think what's really coming through is that there's so many commonalities with respect to the challenges and barriers facing women, which cross cultural, religious, economic, and social boundaries. And I'm kind of coming through experience that these are rooted in the value that we, and I mean the collective we, women and men, society, governments, the media, consumers of the media, and I know social media was mentioned, place on women, place on women's bodies, on women's expertise, women's work, and what are considered stereotypical feminine traits and behaviours. And I think over the 15 years of working in this space, and particularly around prevention and preemption strategies for gender-based violence and conflict-related sexual gender-based violence, is the importance of equitable, inclusive, diverse organizations, diverse planning teams, diverse policymakers, and also clear measurable actions backed up by these comprehensive policies, and ultimately leaders and influencers who are willing to hold individuals accountable for inaction. If we don't have that, if this isn't a whole of society approach, women and men working alongside each other, supporting each other, I don't think we're going to get this change. I definitely see that this isn't a women's issue, this is a societal issue. And I really felt, Yvonne, your words, really incredible words, because I really think it begins in the home. And society, the expectations we put in on young girls and young boys from a very early age. We see it from the moment a woman gives birth to either a male or a female baby. Society is already placing a set of expectations on them, and the media is constantly messaging those young minds. And I saw it myself. I chose a career that was atypical to the career that society was telling me a woman should be aspiring to. I was told I should be aspiring to a world and a life centered on maybe how I look, and to be seen but not heard. Media, imagery, films, they were all telling me that women didn't really belong in the military. And I think it took my socialization and my mom and dad to counter that messaging. And I think we all need to look at how we socialize our young boys and our young girls. Are we making it okay for our young boys to be vulnerable, to be emotional? Or are these seen as, feminine traits and behaviors? Are we teaching young girls that it's okay to, be strong and assertive, to compete, in sports competitively? And I do think a lot of that starts at that very, very early stage of socialization. And I think if we get that right, if we can continue to and continuously challenge those outdated stereotypes, I think that's when we'll lead to change. If we can push back against those outdated expectations, then we can start seeing progress.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what you had to say there, Deirdre. Dr. Daniela, I mean, just leading on from what Deirdre was talking about in terms of ourselves, how we sort of socialize ourselves, how we give certain messaging to boys and certain messaging to girls. I mean, where do we begin really to change that for ourselves?
So I think you've touched on a lot of important points that I can identify as an athlete that really, in my former career, I was the first woman in South Africa to participate in mixed martial arts as a professional. So in terms of Anuna, I'd be interested to hear also from her perspective. I had experiences where the gym I trained with only had a men's bathroom. So if I wanted to go to the bathroom, then that was just how it had to be. They didn't have female officials, so when you weighed in, there were no females. You were undressed and they were weighing you. That they sort of, I said to them, okay, so I'm about to take my clothes off. What's the story here? They said, oh yes, we really should be getting some female officials. So really, but what I did, and, you know, people looking at me, and again, and something that Renee also said, you know, that you're a pretty girl, why would you get smashed in the face? Why would you choose to do that? And it's something, in terms of what Julian has said, you know, I just wanted to. It was a sport I loved. I was good at it, and I went ahead. But there's so many inequalities, so many sort of things that I faced in terms of men just looking at me very strangely and kind of almost not wanting me there. But one of the things I took from that was I don't think you demand respect in that kind of situation. I think you earn it. So we don't. I wasn't sort of in an attacking way to my male colleagues, like, well, you know, you should respect me and I should have my own change room. I'm not entitled to. I came there to their world, and the way that I sort of feel that I earned their respect was actually just to teach them. They didn't know. They didn't know that women can also fight. They didn't really know that women are tough. We can bleed like them. We can, you know, fight with broken bones just like them. And actually, but it was a more sort of friendly dialogue versus a hostile one. They actually just teach them. They don't actually know. In the end, these guys that were sort of so hostile towards me and treated me so strangely are now, you know, I could say I'm so close to them that I consider them family. So we don't always have to demand respect. We can sometimes actually just be nice and get to know them and let them get to know us. And I'm not sure what Renee's similar sort of experience, and Deirdre, I don't know if that's how you guys also went about sort of earning the respect.
And Renee, I think you can take over from here.
I think the core is it's from home, all the things we learn, and educate. If we don't educate people on it, how would they know? The struggle I have with disabilities is not a lot of people know of it. It's because we need to educate them. So if I want change to happen in the Paralympic Games and with women in that sport, I have that 1%, and we all here to educate people on it, and to educate them in the areas we're gifted at, from music to writing to listening to people. Everybody's different way of sharing that is educate. And adding to Yvonne, when you said your 4 boys, they need to make up the bed and that, I strongly believe that in life you're a team. Doesn't matter what sexuality you are, and doesn't matter where you come from, you're a team. And I always say teamwork is a dream work. I'm not just an athlete. My training group, my family, friends, everybody around you make you who you are. And therefore, there's a lack in a lot of circumstances where people some people are victims of people that actually, the way they grew up, they were also victims. And it's kind of like a circle. So if we talk about educate, we need to not just educate ourselves in that matters, but educate that people that are abusing someone verbally or physically. We need to help them as well.
Justina, where do you stand on that in terms of, what Andrene was talking about was also just educating men. As a gender activist who is really an activist for women, do you believe really that there is a duty on your part as well in terms of educating men? I mean, we've been talking now about where we begin with young boys, how we bring up, myself as a mother to a boy, how we sort of start from that early age, how we bring up boys. Do you believe that there is this duty on us as well, while we battle with getting our own rights, but also having to educate boys, having to educate young men? Do you think that that is a sort of duty of ours, and that we can't really escape, really?
Absolutely. I think Arne just mentioned something that got me almost jumping out of my seat when she said, we are team, men and women, we are team. I mean, and we are in this world together. We're not going to be able to effect change if we only concentrate on women and we do not concentrate on men. It is not just, it's not that we have a duty or it's obligation or it's a help from men to join us. It's actually their duty to join, because men will not exist in this world if women are not there. We give birth to men. We raise men. We then, give them the space to be who they are. And we somehow tend to take then a kind of a backup space and step and give them the glory to then act as it is. Perpetrators are not born perpetrators. They are learned. It's a learned behavior. Inequality is not something that people just effect. The fact is it's learned behavior. You learn that you can look at a woman at a certain way. You learned that you can pay less a woman and you can get away with that. You learn that you can mistreat or you can do whatever it is and you get away with that. And in that equation, both men and women need to take the responsibility for it. We all need to take the accountability, the responsibility, and be accountable for that. As Sissy Vaughan was saying, and all the women here have said so succinctly, is that, we need to be able to look at these men and say, hey, today you do the bed. But at the same time, it's the same way we know, as women, when our child has been bad, has been abusive to someone else, we instinctively know that there's something wrong that this man or this boy has done. However, we normally, as women, we tend to choose a comfortable space where we then say, I don't know, I didn't see, my son cannot be that bad. No, as women, intrinsically, we know that our sons have done something, but we have chosen to actually not enact on it and not talk about it. As sisters, we do the same. So I normally try to say that when we look at equality and the perpetuation of inequality, and then looking at a place where we want to get, where there is equality for all in the next generations, now and in next generations, we as human beings need to look at ourselves in three groups. One is we are perpetrators. Another one is we are enablers, or then we are victims. And that is where we are in everything in life. We have to choose. If we want to continue being perpetrators, and women can be perpetrators of violence in action, but in their silence and in their inaction, they also choose to be perpetrators. Or they stand in the fence and they decide that, you know what, I haven't seen it, or he's my best friend, I'd rather not get involved, or he's my brother, how can I stand against my brother? No, in that, when you take that position, you are enabling this man to continue being a perpetrator. You're enabling injustice to another woman. And in that sense, you are enabling also injustice to generations that come. Because by taking that stance, you are taking a position where when your daughter, your niece, or whoever comes in the next generation is abused, you then don't have the right to talk. You don't have the right to complain because you have taken a stance of saying, I'd rather not see it. And of course, with victims, our duty, particularly as sisters and mothers, but also as men, is to support them. These women or us, we are someone's children. We are sisters to men. We are friends to men. And so there is actually just an innate duty as humanity in all to actually stand up and say, I do not stand for that. So not in my name as a woman, not in my name as a man, should this state of injustice continue while I'm alive.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now, thank you so much, Josina. I think you've had your closing nice message there for our viewers. So I'm just going to go around the room, literally less than a minute, just your closing message for women as we celebrate Women's Day. It doesn't have to be a long thing, just your closing message. Tanda Nkosi, let's come to you. A quick message.
I was hoping you were not going to come this way. A quick message, ladies. First of all, thank you so much for just being here and sharing your knowledge in the different spaces that you're in. Just as a closing, I'm going to try to be a very, very short. There's just something I really like that Justina mentioned, that even as women, we can be enablers. As mothers, we can also be enablers. But something that's also important when we raise our children as well is that we need to also rehabilitate children that have not had the opportunity to have a proper upbringing where women are viewed a certain way. Because some people, when you see your mom hitting your dad, for you it is demonstration of love, because mom still comes back home and they still sleep in the same bed. So that means that is okay. So we need to also just look at it in a two-way, to say, okay, we are educating children about how to view women in society, but also those that have had a flawed view of women, and even women that have had a flawed view of how a man should view them. We need to also rehabilitate that whole view as well. Just in closing with that is, we all have platforms that we are in, and we also can make a difference in the different platforms that we're in. And it's always so important that it goes back to also something that I stand for. It's upskilling women, whether it's a soft skill or a hard skill, where we can take people under wing and use the influence that we have to make sure that a woman that's younger than you, or a woman that's older than you, is able to stand by herself for herself and be able to make decisions that come from not a place of lack, but a place of empowerment. Thank you.
All right, Ntando, thank you so much. Advocate Carvery, let's have your closing remarks, please.
I thought you'll also say I'll talk at the end, but
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yes, I encourage women, men, children to use any resource which is out there, not to keep quiet, not to look away. Don't be an enabler, because the minute you also be quiet when that is happening in your family, in your neighborhood, and how a woman is being treated, not only in the issue of violence, but also how opportunities are availed to women, how we treat women in the spaces of being a health worker, a doctor, a lawyer, and how we avail those opportunities. But then in closing, also, I would say the minute we work together and work as a team and not keep quiet, because I think if we are keeping quiet, we are also perpetuating this. I'm still saying this is the responsibility of the state, because the state is its responsibility to make sure that the citizens of its country are safe and they feel safe. And they cannot just look away. They cannot just allow women to withdraw cases. But also, if I'm a doctor and I am a nurse, there's a woman who's coming, it's my responsibility. Because what happened to a situation where I would also go and report a matter, even if it's not impacting on me. I think we need to revive that, and we need to handhold our boy children as well, to say, we are here, let's work together. We are not neglecting you, and we need to resolve this issue of inequality and this issue of poverty and all the issues or social ills which are there. It's us who can resolve them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Advocate. Mami Yvonne, your closing remarks, please.
I just wish to thank everyone who's participated here. You know, it has been an amazing and a great learning journey. And I personally believe, you know, in forums like this nature, you know, because they provide a platform to share and to be inspired. And I also want to say thank you and commend everyone who's put this essential event together. And I want to say to all women of color, arise you women of color, fear nothing. We have chosen this path. This war, we must win. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mami Yvonne. All right, I'm going to ask you, Michelle, let me come to you to have your closing remark, please.
I think as women, we need to stand together. We need to hold hands. We need to participate in the world together. Use social media as an opportunity to learn and to be in dialogues that develop our skills, not our egos. And we need to participate in the world to make it a better place. I live by that quote of Margaret Mead, that one should never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed it's the only thing that ever has. So also to remember that as women, that we are actually born with greatness out of ourselves, and that while we feel that the fear and the anxiety of the situations that we're in, we can also choose the courage. So to find people in your community, on social media, reach out, ask for help. That's what we need to do together, is participate in the world together.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Gillian, I'm going to ask you for your closing remarks as we celebrate Women's Day.
Also lovely to meet each of you and to hear your stories and your thoughts. You've given me so much to think about. Great stuff. I think I'd just like to say that we so often do speak of the negative aspects of men, and I think it's really important that we encourage the ones who are good to us and who do the right things. So I think that the self-esteem of men too is very important. So for our boys, our husbands, colleagues, when we see them responding well, when we see them doing good things, let's praise them and encourage them.
Perfect. All right. Deirdre, your closing remarks?
Thanks so much, Flo, and thanks again for the opportunity. Really, really enjoyed it here today. To close, I would say we have to remember that organizations, communities, governments, not women need to change to improve equality. We each have a proactive and deliberate role to play in shaping the future of our organizations, of our communities and our societies. We are all parts of the whole, women and men. And I think when one of us suffers or is held back or oppressed, then we all are. Strengthening the rights of women and girls helps all of society move forward towards an equitable and peaceful society. And I think the pursuit of international peace, security and sustainable development as the overarching objective of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they're simply not achievable without the empowered participation of women. And I think importantly as well, women shouldn't be viewed as victims, but as central actors in moving towards sustainability. So I'd leave with this: individuals matter, individual actions matter, organised collective actions matter, and certainly all of our actions as empowered, educated, powerful women, they all matter. And I think today on Women's Day, we can all lay the foundations for future generations to fulfil their own individual potential. Thank you.
All right, so lovely, Deirdre. Thank you. Dr. Daniela, your closing remarks, please.
So I just want to say thank you to everyone. I wish I could have met all of you in person. Hopefully one day we will, and hopefully this coronavirus pandemic, the